Anime Declassified is a podcast run by the Anime Secrets website. Check us out at animesecrets.org for more anime, video game, tokusatsu content. Remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts today.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Anime Declassified, where today we will be talking about the latest Studio Ghibli movie that has hit theaters, The Boy and the Heron, Hayao Miyazaki's latest film. Joining me to discuss this movie today will be our chief, our leader, the great Riz.
Full of all the Riz in the world for all of you awesome people out there.
Let's not push it too far.
I mean, look, if you're gonna lean into it that hard, I gotta help you out a little bit there.
Don't ruin the mood. So yeah, The Boy and the Heron was released in wide release in theaters back towards the end of November. It has made 151 million in the US box office. It has won numerous awards and recently won the Golden Globe Award for Best Animated Feature of 2023, among others. And it's receiving a lot of praise. So naturally, this is something that we should talk about because this could, Hayao Miyazaki is getting up there in age. This could potentially be his last movie if, he decides it to be, or if he really pumps in the brakes on the next one. But we'll see.
I mean, he's been saying that for well over a decade or two now, that he's done. And just when he thinks he's done, he comes back with something new.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to hold off on calling this his last work because I don't trust him to not come back with something in the future again.
Oh yeah, no, we'll see. But just kind of a brief summary. The movie takes place in the Pacific War in Tokyo, or at least it starts there before our main character moves with his dad to the countryside after the city is unfortunately hit by the bomb ratings that were pretty common around wartime Japan at the time. And throughout the country, Mahito finds himself kind of struggling, integrating himself into country life, dealing with the loss of his mother, and eventually he finds himself being lured into a mysterious tower where, upon where he enters, he finds a, for lack of a better word, magical world in there, as is the standard for most Studio Ghibli movies. And from there, he learns. How can I put it? Because this movie is a bit out there, for sure. But he basically encounters a lot of different points of view and is almost being entrusted to hold up this magical world. But at the end, chooses against it, believing himself not being worthy, and eventually is able to accept his new mom and move on with his life afterwards. It's a very, very brief summary of it because there is a lot to get into when it comes to this movie, but just kind of giving you a broad sense of it as possible without spoiling too much.
Yeah.
So I ask you this, Rizwan, as you said you were the only person in your theater when you went to go watch it. It was pretty late into its release by that point, so understandable. What did you think of it?
So, as an update to what I sent to you on Discord, we did end up getting 3 people come in at the very last second.
Oh, very nice.
So I wasn't completely alone, but definitely it was a very empty theater. Um, so for me, this movie hits a lot of things that are typical for a Miyazaki film, and then they hit a lot of things that I don't think I've ever seen a Miyazaki film do quite this way before.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I thought this was a fantastic movie. It was a fun ride and has given me many, many discussions with people about just what was the greater meaning of the story? What was he trying to go for? And I am just ready to give some of those insights on what I think and hear what you have to say on it.
For
But what do
sure.
you think,
So,
Miguel?
well, I guess my first question is for you. I think you've already answered this one for me. Um, but you said you ended up going to the dub version of it, correct?
Yeah.
I wanted to go to the dub version, but unfortunately, when I went to go see it, was after I left work, and the late night showing of it was only the subtitled version because they usually split them up a little
Yeah.
bit. Like usually they'll do one day of both, or one day of one and then one day of the other. But because this one was a wide release, because like a little history on it, back when the Ghibli films were being shown in theaters, because I'm sure you've seen it like at your local theater, like
Yeah.
you look at the showtimes and you see like a random Studio Ghibli movie being put up there.
Mm-hmm.
They were being distributed by Fathom Events, so it was like a special showing, and they would only have like 2 days of it. But as anime has become more and more popular, it's not a new discussion to say that anime's grown exponentially in the US, not just in terms of like people being able to get into it more, but as a business, the success of movies like Demon Slayer and the Dragon Ball Super movies has kind of shown like theaters like there's real money to be made off of weebs.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
So this
100%.
is like the first real big release that G Kids, which is now the new US distributor for the Ghibli films, has had. And so, me seeing that there are multiple showtimes was a shocker. Not a shocker, but like, oh yeah, no, this is going to be around for a bit. Uh, Glad that they're still giving the options for dubs and subs.
Mm-hmm.
But myself, I found myself really enthralled by the world. For me, this is easily the best animated movie I've seen this year. Like, not just in terms of story, but just like pure animation. That scene with the fire at the beginning was just like, it was enthralling. Like,
Now, when you say this year, I assume you mean 2023.
correct.
Okay,
I should say,
because I saw it
yeah.
in 2024. You're seeing in 2023, so
I'm saying like in 2023 of all the
yeah,
animated movies I saw, this was to me the best one I saw.
I can definitely see that. I mean, I'm trying to think back to what animated movies we had last year. Um, I didn't really go to the theaters too much, so I don't know what was out. But definitely, this was a high contender for one of the best movies I saw in theaters last year.
It was yeah, and it was like in terms of like hand drawn animation, it was absolutely gorgeous. Like
Yeah,
there's excuse me, there's just something about hand drawn animation that like I find more alluring, more I can get into it a little bit more than I can something that's done in CG, which there's nothing wrong with CGI or computer generated movies. Like those can be really really good. But for me, I'm just a sucker of the old fashioned hand drawn, and so I'm a little bit more favorable to them. But this was just beautiful to watch. The story was really good, and it's a story that was definitely like when you compare it to some of the other Ghibli films, you're like, well, it feels a bit off. But when you realize that this is not so much an adaptation of a prior story, but
hmm
more of a kind of like almost autobiographical. Like this is the stuff that Miyazaki himself is feeling, and he's kind of putting on there on the screen, in words like kind of his feelings as he's kind of getting closer to where he knows he can't kind of keep going. And that to me was like the more interesting part. The fantasy elements of it were still phenomenal, but when you get into like the human emotion, like you're seeing almost Miyazaki talking to himself, in his old age to his younger self. It's like to me, I think that was the more interesting part of it.
yeah. No, definitely that is a huge part of it, definitely. And like I said, there are definitely things in this movie that are very Miyazaki. But like you said, there's a lot of stuff in here that's new and things we haven't seen before. And When you said it feels autobiographical to you, that made me think you're right because I hadn't thought of it that way. Um, so I haven't read the source material that this comes from. There's a book I think called like the something about the decisions you make in life or something. I don't remember
Uh,
the exact name.
They mention it in the movie. It's not necessarily an adaptation of that, but it drew inspiration from it. The book is
Hmm.
called "How Do You Live,"
There you go. That's
and
what it was.
I believe that's also the Japanese title for the movie. They made the title "The Boy and the Heron" for the English release, but its original Japanese release title is "How Do You Live."
Yeah, I see that now in the article. Yep. But yeah,
But
so I've never read the book, but I thought it was very interesting that you say it's autobiographical because to me it seemed like it's very possible because I'm pretty sure Miyazaki lived through some of the stuff that he's writing about, given how old he is.
yeah, he's brought up how his father did was head of a factory that did some of the air munitions for the Japanese army.
Hmm.
And so when the bombardments in Tokyo were happening, his dad moved them from the city over to the countryside in order to kind of stay away from some more of the carnage that was going on. So that part, or that early part in the movie, was taking a lot from Miyazaki's childhood.
Yeah, no, it definitely does, and I think there's something to be said about the themes of the movie um, that are being explored by him,
Hmm.
especially the feeling of alienation in the face of your parents being separated, in this case by death,
Hmm.
and your father remarrying and a new child coming into your life as a sibling for you.
Hmm.
I mean, that is a very common thing. I feel a lot of people, even in America, can really relate to because there's a large number of people in this country whose parents are either divorced or they got widowed and got remarried and continue building families after with somebody new.
Hmm.
And how do these people, cope with that? Some people are very adaptive and they're able to just go with the flow. Others, they never truly recover no matter what happens, and they're left as just an empty cell after. So I mean, this definitely hits home for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways.
Oh yeah, and then like the in the early portion, so kind of going through the movie here, where Mahito doesn't really fit in. He like hits himself with a rock in the head to avoid having to deal with people because doesn't know how to conform to them. They clearly don't think very highly of him. His father's this kind of big city guy. He drops him off in a car and doesn't leave the best first impression to these kids in the country who probably don't see cars all that often.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And so he's going through a lot, and there's not really anyone there to talk to him about it. And even if there was, he, he was having trouble opening up. And so it's all those struggles that the kid is going through that you know let you in, and you start to root for him almost right off the bat.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But yeah, no, a lot of it. There's a lot of the good themes, and there was another thing that you enjoyed about the movie, Riz.
Um, I enjoyed the Heron himself. That was a really fun character for me.
How gobsmacked were you when you found out who voiced him?
Very, very. I was like, hold up. I didn't actually realize who it was until this morning when I was doing some research to get ready for the podcast, and I was like, wait. Robert Pattinson is the Grey Heron.
Yep.
And then looking further on the list, real quick, we'll talk about this later, but you also had Kristen Bale, Mark Hamill, and just other people, Barbara Goodson, Rita Repulsa, for God's sake. So no, there's a lot of interesting talent in this movie as the voice actor cast in the English version.
hmm Oh yeah, Mark Hamill and Christian Bale returning to their second stint in a Ghibli movie is always nice.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I didn't expect them to be able to return. I never thought about it like that. So
Oh
very
yeah,
interesting.
oh yeah, Mark Hamill, big animation fan. Christian Bale, there's that famous story going around the internet when he saw Spirited Away. He told his agent, "I don't care what role you get me. I want to be, I want to be an I want to read for one of these movies," and then he lands the role of Hal.
Yeah,
A year before he takes the mantle of Batman.
yeah. Was it real? Was it really that close together?
Howl's Moving Castle was released stateside in 2004. Batman Begins was released the following year.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good repertoire right there. Just those two movies. Because I was talking to a friend somewhere. It might have even been our own Discord
Mm-hmm.
server, and I was telling him, look, the best Batman to me is Kristen Bale in terms of like Batman movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so seeing him go from one of my favorite Ghibli movies, because Howl's is one of my favorite Ghibli movies, to also one of my favorite iterations of Batman. I mean, this guy is really talented.
As someone pointed out, we had two Batman, a Joker, and Green Goblin in this movie.
Oh my God, you're right.
And one, as we kind of go further on into the movie, uh, there's a lot of like not just memorable animation scenes, but like I think one of the parts that got to me was as Mahito's kind of like not necessarily thinking black and white, but it's the scene where the cute little creatures are ascending up to
Mhm.
become basically born as kids, and you see the pelicans swooping in and eating them. You kind of get this sense of like, oh, so clearly the pelicans are going to be like bad people,
Yeah,
and they get kind of burned down, and then he talks to the old pelican who asks him to kill him, and he tells him like, we never asked to be brought into this world. We can't eat the food that we normally eat here because it'll poison us, and so we're just trying to survive. And you get that like scene of like, oh, maybe not everything is what you think it is in this world. Maybe there's more to this world than there is. And that like monologue by that pelican alone was
oh yeah,
really good.
it
I wish
was.
I could have heard Willem Dafoe's version of it.
It was pretty inspirational, and I liked it. Like, I think the voice cast did a really good job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one question of something I was thinking about earlier
Mm-hmm.
with regard to that infamous scene where Mahito hits himself in the head with the rock.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you said you think that's him just not being able to cope with the people around him. My
Yeah.
interpretation was a little bit different on that, actually.
What was that?
So, my interpretation of that was going back into that theme of alienation. It
Mm-hmm.
seemed like he was trying to find a way to get the attention of his dad to make him notice him again and remember him and care about him and tote over him. So he hits himself in the head with a rock. Then, to avoid his dad getting angry with him for hitting himself, he doesn't outright say, "Oh yeah, I did it to myself." He just says, "I tripped and fell," which is a classic thing that kids will say when they're trying to avoid getting other people in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So the dad can't get mad at him, and he's getting more angered with the fact that somebody beat him up. And I think Mahito wanted some attention to reassure him that everything was still going to be somewhat the same, even though his dad effectively married his mom's younger sister, and they're having a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the interpretation I got out of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I could see that. There's a lot of different ways, and honestly, both could be true. Maybe he did want to get his dad's attention, but at the same time, maybe he just did not want to deal with his classmates on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Both could be true.
yeah,
Uh,
definitely, I think so.
Now, I think one of the comic, one of the most Looney Tunes aspect of the movie is when we get to the giant parakeets.
Okay, those parakeets are amazing to me.
I just like them hiding next to the door with the giant knife and fork. I'm like, okay, this is some Looney Tune stuff right here.
Yeah, but also I don't know how it was in the Japanese sub that you watched, but in the English dub, they're very subservient to the king, the parakeet king.
Mm-hmm.
And so you always hear stuff like, "Oh, my king, please let us do what we can. Please don't leave us behind. We'll come with you. We'll protect you.
It
We
was
live to serve you only."
very similar. It's like
Okay.
for the king, for the good of the nation, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought those parakeets were hilarious in a Looney Tune sense, especially the way they kept getting hit over the head
Yeah.
when they're infiltrating the castle.
Yeah, it was pretty great. I just loved all the birds we had in this movie. I'm a bird fan. I don't care too much about dogs and cats, but birds are my pet.
So
So
this was definitely up your jam.
this is my jam exactly.
No, definitely. So as we kind of get into more of the fantastical world, the thing I was not expecting was how the world essentially handled the little bit of I don't want to say time travel, but it was essentially a pocket dimension.
Yeah.
Like that was something I actually wasn't expecting at all. Like when I was watching the trailers, seeing the cast and characters there, I thought they were just going to be, separate citizens living in that
Mhm.
world. But then, you see, you start putting some of the pieces together, like the little girl with the fire powers, which was the biggest, one of the darkest senses of irony I've seen in a while. His mom being powerful with fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit
That was that was interesting.
yeah. Oh boy, that was something else.
And it's interesting to me. Now, I don't know if you would know this reference or not, Miguel, but I got a slight Star Wars vibe from the room with all the doors
Yeah.
because in Star Wars Rebels and in the Ahsoka TV show, they have this thing called the World Between Worlds where you enter this pocket dimension and there's a bunch of different doors that can lead you to different points in history and you can walk out there and do something.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what enabled Ezra to save Ahsoka from being killed. So I thought it was pretty cool that they were able to bring this back, especially given Mark Hamill's in the cast. I know it's a complete coincidence they didn't plan it like that, but I thought it was pretty awesome nonetheless.
Oh yeah. And for me, it's like you just start to put the pieces together, like the main old lady, her being like the boat fisherwoman in the other world
Hmm.
was another neat thing, and then especially when he's leaving, or they split up, and she gives her basically her doll to basically
Yeah,
keep her old body safe when she got dragged back into the world.
yeah,
Especially when they start popping back out, she just pops out of his pocket.
yeah. That was very entertaining. I was kind of expecting them to do something like that at the end.
Hmm. But this movie was definitely very, very beautiful. And as we get kind of towards the end, we see the grand uncle, saying like, "I want someone pure of heart to be able to take over for me to continue building these worlds. And that to me is when like the autobi- autobiographical sense of the movie like really popped out, because it's Miyazaki saying, some people can think of it as conceited, or others can see it like an artist really like wanting to make sure someone can care after his work when he's gone. It's like, I want someone who really understands these characters, this world, the sense of animation, all this stuff. And then, Mahito saying like, I'm not. I have malice in me. I have these things that would not keep this world beautiful.
Yeah. And this is a classic Ghibli theme that we see over and over again of looking to the future and trying to find a way to preserve the world we live in. Because if you look back at Princess Mononoke,
Mm-hmm.
that was very environmental heavy and thematic. So it's trying to give the lesson of here are the thematics for um, making sure that you as the audience know to continue maintaining the environment, protecting against like pollution and toxic waste and all that. In this case, it's the older generation is dying out. It's up to you kids now to take up the mantle to protect the world, to live life good and continue on the right path, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very Miyazaki Ghibli type thing in the sense of this isn't just a movie like a cartoon movie like how you have, whatever things that are coming out now in America, but these movies are always packed with lessons to help the audience kind of take something away and hopefully carry on with them after.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. And so, yeah, there's like a lot to take in. Like I myself, I've been wanting to rewatch it, just have not had the time to go back to a theater to go watch it again. Because I think it's been moved down to one showtime in my area,
Hmm.
and it's usually like a 2 or 3 o'clock showtime. And today, MLK Day, I had the day off, so was able to record this on an earlier time than normal. But usually I'm working till like 5:30 at my full time job, so obviously I'm not going to be able to catch that showtime.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
but
like I'm seeing a lot of show times in my area still, which surprises me because when I was looking for a movie time last week to go watch it, the last day any with anything was going to be last Wednesday,
hmm
and I didn't see anything on Thursday. I didn't see anything on Friday. But then all of a sudden today, on January 15th,
hmm
most of the theaters in the area have showings again.
nice.
So I'm looking for a subtitled one possibly to go watch.
Oh yeah, so we'll kind of wait and see where it ends up on streaming. Max has been going through a bit of a S show with the leadership, but they still have the Ghibli collection up there. So best bet would be that it ends up on Max here in like a month or two.
Yeah.
Um, it may get like another re-release in anticipation for the Academy Awards. In all likelihood, this is gonna get that nomination. Usually, Ghibli
It
is
probably
down for
will.
one.
Yeah.
So maybe around that time there'll be showtimes that pop up again.
Yeah.
But overall, like I said, this was probably to me the best animated movie I saw in 2023. And I enjoyed not just the fantastic animation, but for me, my biggest takeaway from the movie was just how much of a personal movie it felt that I was watching. It was an artist basically putting out their biography and, telling us like what they fear, but what they hope for their upcoming future. and I thought that was just really beautiful.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I gotta say, like when I was first watching this movie, the thematics felt very dark compared to other movies that came out from the sky.
Hmm.
Did you get that similar kind of impression?
I mean, the movie starts off with a mother dying in a fire, so yes.
Well, not even just that, but like all the stuff Mahito is going through with the alienation, the the journey he went through. It's
Hmm.
not like with Howl's Moving Castle, where while it's got some heavy themes, it can still maintain a more positive outlook throughout. This one felt a bit more bleak at times, but I'm not necessarily complaining about that. I'm just commenting that I've not seen, or I don't think I've seen a Miyazaki film do that before.
Very nice. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's definitely a little bit darker than most of his other stuff, but for me, it's still like very beautiful to watch. And
Yeah,
honestly, like if you guys have not gotten the chance to, uh, I would definitely recommend you go out to watch it. It's really good, but I will say it may not hit everyone as it hit us,
yeah,
because there are some people who uh, didn't get it, which is understandable. Because compared to some of the other Ghibli films or Miyazaki films themselves, they don't quite have. This one doesn't quite have the fantastical element that the others do, or really necessarily the story that the other ones have. But
yeah,
it's such a layered movie that sometimes. No, I'm not saying that. You know, I'm not saying this is an insult to anyone. So please don't take it this way. But this is definitely one that is going to make you that it's going to require a little bit more thinking to get.
yeah. And then like this movie is very similar to another Ghibli movie that came out, Grave of the Fireflies, to me.
Hmm.
Now that's not a Miyazaki film. That's
It's
a Isao Takahata movie, but it has a very similar feel to that.
not. Not nearly as dark,
No, not nearly as dark as Grave of the Fireflies. I mean that had a whole nother level of darkness,
for sure.
but it definitely had that feel of darkness regardless. And that says a lot about how the Japanese, rightfully so, mind you, view the Second World War and the devastating impact that they had to deal with from that war.
Yeah, it's a little crazy uh, to me. Going off on a little bit of a tangent, how we essentially had two movies from Japan, from Toho of all places, to literally depicting how they handled not just the Second World War, but the aftermath of the Second World War.
Mhm.
Godzilla minus one literally came out the week before this one, before Boy and the Heron, and had similar themes in regards to the war. And both this and Godzilla minus one are lauded as two of the best movies that came out last year. It's
Yeah,
interesting timing.
I couldn't get myself to go see Godzilla minus one yet. I couldn't make a time for it, but definitely gonna try and make it out there at some point. It's still showing in theaters for me.
Yeah, it just left my market last weekend. I was shocked how long it stayed, but oh man, that was a blast to watch.
Oh, I bet.
Uh, but yeah, overall, I think both of our feelings on Boy and the Heron really good.
Yeah, definitely.
Any last words before we wrap this one up, Riz?
No, I'm just happy we had a chance to sit down and talk about this movie. It's well deserved.
Oh yeah, I've been wanting to get the rest of the crew to go watch it for a while, but
Well,
sometimes it
they'll learn
doesn't
one
work
day.
out. Hopefully.
They'll learn one day what they missed out on in theaters.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, overall, fantastic movie. You guys should definitely go give it a watch. We kept a lot of the plot description very brief, very broad, because again, it's one that's no amount of words can do what you see on screen justice for the movie. So yeah, definitely give it a check out.
Yeah,
For,
definitely.
but that will be it for us today on another episode of Anime Declassified. We'll talk to you guys later. Take care.